everybody, and welcome to episode 5 of the Music Minds podcast. My name is Tony Fennell, and joining me in our fight for the truth, justice, and the American way... American way? No, okay. Sorry, is my co-host, John Stone. Was that a little bit over the top for you, John?
Yeah, why not? What the hell?
Today's show is called Payola, the dangerous game of pay-to-play. If you're in the business of music, you may have heard of the term payola. And for those of you who don't know its meaning, or even those of you that are wondering if it still exists, we're going to delve into this subject on today's show and perhaps give you a little bit of clarity. So, what is payola, or its other name, pay to play? If I could give our audience a quick overview, payola first appeared during the 1950s when record labels would hand off cash to a DJ or the radio station's program director in order to get that label's records played at that particular station. Payola was explained by saying that the label was renting the airtime to play the track, or, put another way, sponsoring the song. This is already sounding dodgy, right, John?
Yeah, a little bit.
Okay, payola became a buzzword and a serious problem for the record labels and radio stations in 1959 when one of America's biggest DJs, Alan Freed, was caught up in a payola scandal. Freed was accused of taking cash in order to play certain songs on heavy rotation. And by the way, John, it's a claim he always denied. He always denied it. Anyway, his radio station didn't give a rat's. WABC fired him and he was charged with 26 counts of commercial bribery. Ouch.
Wow. Oof.
Because of that, payola was out in the open. Anyway, payola has grown over the years and has always been prevalent in the music business. Yes, it's illegal, but for the record labels, it was worth the risk as it helped some of their artists become stars. And with even more cash splashed, these same stars became superstars. With all that money being exchanged between labels and radio stations, songs that wouldn't have seen the light of day became a hit. Terrible, right? Well, this dirty under-the-table secret isn't so secret anymore. And as of now, the only real difference is that today it's called corporate sponsorship. What do you think? What do you think, John? Is payola alive and kicking?
Yeah, I mean, it seems to have gone legit, shall we say? And there's a lot of reasons for that. I mean, from what you were talking about, Tony, you know, in the old days, DJs were the influencers of the day. They were the parties that sort of decided what songs were going to be put on the air, and they had their audience that tuned in every day to listen to them, and they were the point person for bringing music to the public and being able to get it out there so that people would then go buy it, would go potentially see the artist perform. So all of that was critical, and the DJ was right there in the middle of it. So a program director, a DJ, especially at a big radio network like, you know, somewhere here in New York City or something like that, they had a lot of power. And of course, it made total sense economically and business-wise to be on their good side and maybe slip them a couple of bones here and there to get them to play your music. But today, music is really being consumed in many, many different ways, and radio, it hasn't lost its power, but I don't think it's the single point where everything is coming through as far as music is concerned. Nielsen estimates there are about 272 million Americans that listen to radio annually. But the top three formats are country, which is a whole different animal, and the other two are news and talk. So you're not really seeing music out there in the way that it is, and even when it is being heard on the radio, many times that's a sort of passive listening. You're hearing it at a supermarket, or you're in the car or something like that. When you're in the car, you're listening to Spotify, you're listening to your phone, maybe you're even listening to a network that you already have pre-programmed for yourself. So it's not being heard the same way, and it's not, I don't think payola, would be used in the same way that it had been in the past. When you brought this up as a subject for us to talk about, I was like, boy, my only experience with payola was watching that episode of WKRP in Cincinnati when Dr. Johnny Fever was offered a couple of dollars and he had to have his moral crisis of whether he should take that money or not. And I'm sure on the publishing side where I am, I'm sure that's been even more sub rosa, so to speak, than what you saw with DJs and such, because a publisher, especially in the old days, Tin Pan Alley and stuff, they'd bring in a song, the publisher would sign that song, and then they had to go out and get that song recorded by Frank Sinatra or the big artist artists of the time. I'm sure you saw a lot of payola back and forth at that level where you had an artist like that taking some money to record a song. Because I can tell you one thing, we have a lot of songs in our catalog that were not very good, and Frank still recorded them. So,
well, it's like Elvis. I mean, his songwriting credits are through the roof. I don't think he wrote a note. Elvis doesn't get his name on it. Elvis ain't singing it.
Yeah.
And it's quite simple. It's hilarious, actually, because payola was supposedly banned, right? But it's as prevalent, really, today as it was in the 50s. They're just called playlists now, John. And we will get into that. It's criminal to use it, but record labels, this is how funny they were. Instead of them doing it, they turned to independent promoters, and they had them do exactly the same process with the radio stations as the labels did, but the labels would say, we've had no involvement. And, of course, they were protecting themselves. John, record companies protecting themselves. I've never heard of such a thing. What about you?
That's absurd.
Well, look, it was seriously lucrative. It was a massive sideline for those in charge of playlists and radio stations. I mean, the payments were cash, drugs, vacations, high-end electronics, and dare I say it, John, sex. All of this in return for heavy rotation and airplay. I mean, I have to be honest, I've seen it firsthand. I can remember going to a warehouse in LA when I was signed to one of the major labels that I've been in my lifetime, and I've been very lucky. But it was filled. This warehouse was filled with VHS players. I'm showing how long ago this was now. Wow. Radios, CD players, even bloody microwave ovens. All of these were given as sweeteners to radio stations. I promise you, it was a full-time business. There was a guy in the warehouse saying, what do you need? You need a VHS? And they would take it in, they would hand it over to the DJ and say, play that record.
Yep.
Crazy. I mean, absolutely crazy. But it must be prevalent in the publishing industry.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I'm sure there is a lot of, back and forth, and in certain ways, the publishing side is probably much less regulated because you're really only dealing with intellectual property. I mean, back in the old days, you had the vinyl platter, so to speak, was your actual piece of material. But here you're just talking about a song, and sure, you can pitch it to so-and-so, and they'll say, oh, I like that. Yeah, I might be able to work with that, or do something else, or sit down and do a co-write with them. But in order to get that access, in order to be able to bring that music to them, you're going to have to work some channels and figure out a way. I mean, I have a good friend, and we might have him on at some point on the show. Yeah. He works as, and this is when you're talking about Spotify and you're talking about Pandora and stuff, he is the marketing person at his job. And what his job is to be the liaison with the people at Pandora and such who are accepting music and then determining where it's going to wind up in their mysterious algorithms, which of course we all know is proprietary. So they're not going to tell you, well, how do we decide that this song is going to be at if you like that song, you like this song. Somebody has to make that decision at some point. So there's got to be some kind of back and forth going on there. I'm not saying it's anything illegal or untoward, but that is the way this business works. And now that we've gone digital, so to speak, not so to speak, we've gone digital. It's a whole different animal. And so to your point at the top of the discussion here, we really now are having to see where is the money going to be coming from and where's it going to, because when you're talking about artists, need to get paid. Obviously, they're going to be out on tour. They're doing different things now. They're doing sponsorships and such. But this idea of joining together with corporations and brands, and there are people now at all of these brands, all of the major corporations who are specifically, they are there to create relationships with these artists and with their audiences and find new ways of getting their product out to market or just promote their product without doing a traditional commercial or some sort of straightforward thing. And a big piece of that is now working with artists, which of course involves the label because you're talking about music and their management and such, and bringing that to them, bringing those opportunities to have American Express work with Janelle Monáe to do a project together. In the old days, I mean, I was laughing about this while I was doing a little research on it. I was like, can you imagine Sid Vicious, doing something like this? I mean, up until maybe about 20, maybe even 10, 15 years ago, any artist that was caught doing something so egregious would have been run out of town on a rail. I mean, you're selling out.
That is so true, man. I mean, you actually nailed it earlier on, John, when you said the power of the DJ back in the day. The new power brokers, so to speak, are influencers. So independent promoters are now turned into, let's call Kim Kardashian. She is who she is, but if she says, I happen to quite like blah, 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 bang, it's on. To me, those influencers, that's a newer version of legal payola. Or illegal payola. I mean, basically, you're paying them to play. I mean, we know it works.
Yeah, and it is this person, and we talked about this in the social media podcast. This person has their audience. We now know who that audience is.
Yeah.
You want to bring your brand to them, or vice versa. You want to bring your music to them. You make that deal. You figure out a way to get them to say, okay, and that usually says, hey, here's a pile of money. Do something with this. And say, yes, I love this song. I always play it at the top of my playlist when I'm exercising or whatnot. And bam, there you go. I mean, we just did something recently at my job, actually. Yeah. It wasn't anything like this, but we licensed a song that it was popular, about 20 years ago, maybe a little less, about 18 years ago, on Keeping Up with the Kardashians. And we were thrilled to have that. And they actually used it on the season finale of the show. They actually sang the song while they were in the car. It was terrific. But, very little sync fee, but just for the performance, performance income and the exposure, sort of bringing it back out. And dumb old me, I was like, boy, we should be checking Billboard to see if that song has popped back up on the top, 100. Or of course it hasn't. But that power and the attractiveness of like, here is a show that has, and a brand, and talking about Kim Kardashian, that you cannot deny. You cannot say, oh no, I don't care about that. No, if you do, you're not in this business, and you're not going to make any money doing this business right now. I'll just give you a quick example about influencers and the relationships that they have cultivated, and how brands are cultivating relationships with them to get an idea of this. So Lyft, the car service, right?
Of course.
So at Coachella 2018, they provided 105 influencers with transportation and participated, meaning somebody got some money, in 6 events surrounding Coachella. So they had these different, the side events and such, and parties and that sort of thing. That resulted in an estimated 158 million impressions. So that is all the exposure you can imagine.
Wow.
99% of that probably digital, but it's out there. And it also got them on Online, People Magazine. So, 158 million. I don't know how many DJs ever had that much, even syndicated ones across the country, had that many people listening to them. Here's another one. Marriott. Now, this is something, and so what we're talking about, how is maybe an independent artist, are you going to be able to get yourself compete, number one, with these people who, can throw cash around and have these opportunities and experiences and such. How are you going to sort of break into that market? Some places, and I'm starting to envision how, and it has happened a little bit. You've seen a couple of agencies, ad agencies, sort of try to start their own little record label or do something where they sort of, and they realize, boy, this is a horrible thing to do, and when they stop doing it. But you can see where they want to really become more involved in the actual process, the creative process, the writing, the music, and everything. So Marriott Hotels, they have a brand of hotel called Aloft, and they launched Project Aloft Stars with Universal Music Group, the label. And that gave emerging artists recording time at Capitol Records Studios and tour support in North and Central America. It gave Marriott in return, and the artists in this project, $1.8 billion That's with a B, media impressions. So as we talked about in the social media podcast, those impressions can turn into real hard cash. If you're going to be involved in the music scene with artists and you want to sort of be there to sort of be at the beginning of it, don't just work with Pitbull or Katy Perry or whoever is a big star, but sort of want to be an influencer and bring new music and new artists in. There are ways of doing that, and it can be relatively cheap, and you can see that your return on that investment is going to be pretty significant.
Well, we have to be absolutely honest here. Securing airplay on any radio station, is tougher than ever. And they're all owned by huge conglomerates. So these stations can pick and choose their playlists, their bands, whatever. So artists, they have to turn to sponsorship in order to secure airplay. It's just there's no other way. Pepsi, they launched and relaunched that show, The Sound Drop. I mean, that's with MTV, Shazam, and iHeartMedia. I mean, talk about conglomerate. I mean, that is a monopoly. I mean, it still sounds a bit like payola to me. Well,
and think about it. You're an advertiser. You're buying airtime for your advertising, and you happen to have a nice relationship with an artist or something. Don't you think that might it might be a little, what do they call that? A conflict of interest? It's not, because that's just the way the market is working right now. And, you see a lot of this regulation that had been peeled back and everything. I'm sure somewhere in there, not to get political about this, but I'm sure somewhere in there, somebody's like, okay, well, what used to be bad because of the way the market has changed and everything like that. We can be a little more relaxed about this approach and do things in a different way, because you just can't avoid the brands. They're fighting their way to get to the front of the line and get people to pay attention to them and see them. They have to find a creative way of doing that. Musicians and artists and labels, they've got to get their product to market. So it makes sense. It's not wholesome. It's not virtuous like we always imagined. Like anybody ever thought the music industry was virtuous or wholesome, but it doesn't turn that into, oh, this is just dirty pool and we shouldn't be doing this. Because if you're not doing it, you're the one that isn't and everyone else is. And at the end of the day, you're the one that's going to be left behind. Everybody else is going to be making a lot of money.
That is the truth of the matter. John, you got to look at Warner Brothers, the Universal Music Group's partnership with iHeartRadio. I mean, if that doesn't scream monopoly, I'm confused. In fact, when you add the fact that those same partnerships, Warner's, Universal and iHeartRadio, put on the huge festivals that showcase their chosen acts, to me, Payola looks alive. You know what I mean? It's just got a different skin on it. Oh, and by the way, those festivals, they took in $1.5 billion in sponsorship money in 2017.
Wow.
And it's rising.
Well, I mean, the rich get richer and everybody else gets to watch from the sidelines. What's an interesting and another approach, and this is back to Lyft. This is something there. Jessica Zhang is their culture and entertainment manager. Imagine Lyft has one of those, right? Wow. But it makes sense in what they're doing. And so she had a very interesting comment. It's, fans are extremely savvy today and can see right through a pay-to-play partnership. There you go, Tony. Oh. The best partnerships are those that leverage the brand's platform to showcase the artist's creativity. All right, so Lyft understands people are going to their app, they're participating, they're seeing what's going on, and I'll get to another thing like very similar to that with Airbnb actually.
Wow,
but they also know that they want to bring themselves to an audience, and maybe to an audience that isn't using Lyft. Maybe they want to get a bigger share of the market than Uber or some of the other car share companies and that sort of thing. So of course you want to go and make some of these partnerships happen, or you want to be working with influencers at Coachella and whatnot, because that gives your brand additional credibility. And of course you're going to pay for that. I mean, why wouldn't you? If it's not being explicitly told you can't do that, then of course you would want to be able to go ahead with that. Now, Airbnb, this is an interesting one. My friend actually does this. As part of their website, they also can work with independent contractors to provide experiences. Everything is experience.
Yes, it is.
Experiences to people that come to the city. So my friend actually, he does a little tour of Brooklyn with a motorcycle and a sidecar. And he signed up with Airbnb. Airbnb gets their cut. He gets to, do whatever. But there were people that were offering all kinds of weird things. You could be Marlene Dietrich for a day or something like that. Whatever. But, and they understood that we don't just want to be a place where you go and rent somebody else's apartment for the weekend. We want to get into the entertainment. We understand there's additional value there. So, these brands look at these opportunities and say, absolutely, we want to be involved with that. And, as we were talking about with social media wants to be the new media, the new traditional television and such. Yep. Brands want to not just be the guy, the company that you go and get gas from. They want to do all the other things too. So it's a very interesting dynamic that, of course, is going to involve a lot of money changing hands, sometimes fairly and sometimes unfairly.
Well, it's interesting. I mean, you look at Coachella. It's like a 3-day sales event. Yeah. I mean, that really, yes, they have big bands on it, but I can only imagine the goings on behind the scenes, behind stage. Just to get those, some of those bands, they're on because they're huge. I mean, there has to be some serious changing of cash for some of those smaller bands to get on that bill. And as I say, it is just a license to print cash. I keep saying that, but it is. Yeah. I mean, you get to Coachella, you start to become part of that scene. Yeah. You're going to make a lot of money. And again, the Kardashians, they put you there. When they say, oh, yeah, we really like, and you know what, I'll listen to that when I work out, which you rightly said, John. You get someone's playlist and they go, hey, Kim, what do you like? And she goes, well, bang, 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 bang. Mm-hmm. You notice a massive, massive increase in downloads and sales for those bands. It's just the way it is. It's the new pay to play, I'm sure.
Well, and what we talked about in the Taylor Swift episode, as soon as that fight started, she saw a bump in all of her old album sales. Yeah. It was almost like, why? I don't understand. I mean, maybe suddenly all these people were like, wow, I have to hear this stuff if they're going to fight over it like this. It's very interesting. And that storytelling element, which we know is a basis of all, advertising now. It's all about story. It's all about, experience and that sort of thing. Yeah. You want to engage the viewer. You don't want them to just be passively looking at you. You want to have them in view. What's a better way to do that than to have music and then to have artists and to give people opportunities to interact with them or do something through your platform, so they start associating your company and your brand with that particular artist, which they already like. It's a win-win situation. Again, if You've got that big pile of money to work with. How do you do it as an individual? I mean, with my little band, am I going to go, work with the local deli? Am I going to get an endorsement deal from the grocery store down the street? No, of course not.
John, it also goes to show the power of music when you've got people like Aloft and you've got Lyft, Uber will be next, I'm sure. All these companies want to attach themselves to the mast that is music. Mm-hmm. It is so powerful, and if you can get the kids, we hate that saying, but if you can get the kids to sign up, I mean, it's a goldmine. It really is.
Yeah, and here's another example, American Express. So they've done this for quite a while, and they will regularly give their customers priority access to high-demand concerts and events.
Yeah.
How do they do that? I mean, you and I know that in the old days, again, showing our age, when tour ticket, concert tickets went on sale, you sat there at 9:00 in the morning for Ticketmaster and you dialed the phone and you kept dialing the phone until hopefully you got on. Because if you didn't, you weren't going to get on for the next, 6 weeks. Yeah. And you never got a ticket. Well, now all of a sudden, many of those tickets are not even available at the point when the concert goes on sale. Why? Because somebody like American Express has already snapped those up for their priority customers.
You got it.
So you want to tell, and a tour, they rely on that money. If American Express is guaranteeing that they're going to buy 50,000 tickets for a world tour or for a tour of the United States and Europe and whatnot, for an artist, boy, that's money in the bank. Literally, that's money in the bank. Those tickets have already been bought, and they'll be resold through through this market. So this whole idea that, oh, geez, I can go buy a ticket to a show and get in there now, that's not the way the business works anymore. So why is American Express doing that? So they've just done this with recently with Austin City Limits. They had a festival. Coachella had one, of course. They had tickets for Coachella, and At Coachella, here's one. American Express customers could download the Coachella app, enter their account information. Boy, there you go. That sounds like a scam.
Yeah,
and
wow.
get into the card member lounge and the Platinum House at the Avalon Palm Springs. Did they have an Avalon Palm Springs Platinum House at Woodstock? I don't remember. I wasn't there, but I imagine they didn't. Also, and here's another thing, going back to experiential and all of that sort of thing, they have truly one of a kind. How many people have actually said that?
Yeah.
Listening experiences. So they had one for Justin Timberlake's Man of the Woods album and some theatrical events for Ariana Grande where you could go and get an exclusive opportunity to watch her perform and that sort of thing. Now, here's another one. And a lot of these will have some sort of charitable element to it or some sort of non-profit element, which we all laugh at. We've talked about that before as well. Women in Music. Now, I actually know Women in Music. It's a great organization. It empowers and helps to build careers for women in the music industry, not just performers, but also producers and executives and that sort of thing. So AMX sponsors Women in Music Leadership Academy, which, according to Billboard magazine, is responsible, quote, for identifying, developing, and strengthening women's leadership profiles and business impact across all sectors of the music industry.
Well, it sounds good. Sounds good. Sounds good.
Sounds great. Why is a credit card company doing that? No, I'm not trying to say anything nefarious here, but a credit card company, their goal is to get people to sign up for their credit cards, to use their credit cards to build debt. Why are they so interested? It only is to make themselves look better, okay? Give themselves a better profile, give people to say, oh, that's wonderful that they're doing that. I feel better about this company that, really is just a creditor. It is a company that is there to get you to spend money. Basically, that's their entire existence. So, that's what a lot of these companies will be doing, as well as just getting, not just getting the artist involved and getting their music involved, but then turning that into a touchy-feely, nice, feel-good sort of thing to give themselves a better brand look, because otherwise they're just another big corporation that's trying to sell you something.
Yeah, well, there's the old saying, any way to skin a cat. It makes them look good, and people feel good going into the Platinum Lounge. Woohoo! It's all smoke and mirrors, John. That's the bottom line. And sponsorship will never go away because, let's face it, it's a way for a band to stay on the road. It's a way for younger bands to get their stuff out there. Influencers are just getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And by the time this comes out, the Kardashians will have talked about another band that they like, and they'll be huge. So it's the same stuff, different day, mate. Look, I think we've covered a little bit today. John, as always, you've been a brilliant co-host. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, Tony. It was always fun flapping gums at you.
Oh, I like that. And for all of you out there listening, please don't forget to like and subscribe. And for those of you who'd like to get a little bit more info, check out our website at www.musicminds.com. Till next time, people, see ya.
Take it easy.